Hello and welcome. You're watching QTV and you're watching The Week in Review. I'm your host, Ade Darami, and I have with me in the studio somebody who's becoming a semi-regular guest, our Deputy News Editor, Babukar Sise. Babukar, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Ade Darami.
And as I said, if you've been watching over the last few weeks, you would have seen Babukar and sometimes alternating with Mr. Mboj. Now, for anybody who's watching the show for the first time, this is how it goes. We have 10 big stories that we take from the week just gone by, and we get into them in some detail. Okay? So, the first story, those of us who live in the greater Banjul area, had been not long ago experiencing quite a lot of problems with fuel. Lucky to say I wasn't one of them because I had a company car that they lent me. But others had many problems. Have a look at this and see what some of the problems were.
As a result of all that has happened, Minister Keita said a major investigation has been launched and explained the remit and scope of the investigation and what the next steps will be.
Gambia Petroleum Management have not provided any credible documentary evidence to explain the shortage. And as a result, this prompted a visit to the depot in order to review the information in their IT systems and understand better the situation. It was found that the software acquired to manage the depot operation is not being used, and rather the depot operations were maintained on Excel file. Also, management did not have a single account for each trader or OMC, but transactions were maintained in Excel sheets according to vessels that deliver the fuel stock.
There you heard Babukar. We don't want to prejudice anything by delving into the details, but some of what was there was shocking. But before we get into that, you come from Brikama and you must have seen and experienced the problems people were having when the fuel shortage crisis was on.
Yes, it was a nightmare for many because I've seen people queuing on the road, standing by the roadside for long periods of time without transportation, because most of the taxis here or vans that carry people actually use diesel. So obviously the shortage has a great impact on the people, of course, even on the economy, But then what happened is, according to what we heard from the minister, at the time of this problem, there was 6 million metric tons, that should take the country for another 8 days, But, as things happen, as you said, we don't want to prejudice anything, but then a task force has been set up by the president, by the government, and they are investigating, and the truth will come to light. But then again, we've seen the efforts made by, these stakeholders, some of the stakeholders like Jar Oil and others. We've seen tankers coming from Senegal. It was tough, but then it was coming in bits and pieces, and then because there was a huge demand, the moment it comes, then it's gone again, because people don't trust the system anymore. They just go with gallons and
they buy more than they need.
And imagine the dangers of that, because if you go with your car, probably the car is big and the queue. So what people do is they go with gallons instead of cars, just to get to the front line to get these things. But again, this is the problem, and then, according to some newspaper reports, that the Gambia Petroleum manager or the boss has been arrested, and there's investigation going on. So, as I said, we'll come to know the truth, but also their stocking system, as the minister explains.
I was going to get to that. I mean, Excel spreadsheets are fine, but not for something of this magnitude, and especially when you have the software. I mean, as we said, there might have been a problem, so the investigation might reveal that, but apparently they had the software and they were not using it. Instead, they were using Excel spreadsheets.
Exactly. That's a big problem, because if all the fuel that comes to the country comes through that point, I think they need to have a good data management or recording system whereby it can be just there and anybody can access it. But on Excel, it's like any small business, operating in the country. So I think that was a big mistake, a big problem by them. But who knows if there was even training for the staff to use the software. Because if they could, why would they do it on
well,
Excel?
see, I mean, but that was the next thing that came in, in the discussion in the office, as always there is. People were saying, well, how do we know that the staff were trained in how to use this new software? And maybe they just stuck with Excel because that's what they knew and they were familiar with. And, until it became a crisis, it obviously had worked for them. Nobody had found them out and nobody had, but once you had something like this, and then they say, okay, show us the records, then you go and present somebody with Excel spreadsheet, then it all unravels. So as you said, we don't want to prejudice anything.
Yeah, but also fuel shortage normally is a big problem.
Sure.
Because mobility, you have to use vehicles and other things that use fuel.
Yeah.
But also it came at the wrong time, although it never come at the right time. But then if you look at it, the time of nomination, where I think this is an attack on our democracy, to be honest with you. That's what I felt, because this is a time to select a president who will lead our country. So that's democracy itself. So obviously, if there's a shortage of fuel around that time, where nominations are being affected, even up to the nick of presidential campaigns, I think definitely is something that should have been avoided.
So I agree with you there. Should have been avoided, and repercussions could have been many. But as we say, the investigation has started, the task force has been launched, and let's leave them to do their work. But nonetheless, everybody will be keeping an eagle eye on that one. Thank you for that, Babukar. Now on to something else. In times past, if you mentioned the NIA, people used to tremble. They are no longer in existence. They've been replaced by the State Intelligence Service. How are they getting on? Have a look.
In the way we've been doing business since 2017, we've not arrested, nor have we detained anyone. We, in other words, are also not missing the handcuffs, yet we are much busier.
There you are. We're not missing the handcuffs, and yet we're much busier. When that clip was played in the office, somebody made the joke, how can you have a state intelligence system and they're not arresting anybody, intelligence service, and they're not arresting anybody? But let's on the more serious side, it's a good thing, because a lot of people, based on what we heard during the TRRC, were being arbitrarily arrested, detained. In many cases, they've done nothing. So surely this is a good sign of how this progress is being made.
Yes. I think, as you said, the SIS, if you listen to that much, it's painting the good image of the SIS, distancing themselves from the way the NIA operates.
Which is its predecessor.
Exactly.
Effectively, it's a rebranding and a name change. Really.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So because he was saying no arrest made, no,
and we're not missing the handcuffs.
No detentions. We are not missing the handcuffs. It's a kind of telling people that the NIA can do their job efficiently without arresting and detaining people or without cuffing people. It's kind of the message he is trying to send across. But all this came about when he actually embarked on the annual nationwide tour, which we've seen the army did before, the immigration did the same thing, and then for the NIA also, it's an annual event. They go around to visit security point to assess the security situation of the country. Because the headquarters may be in Banjul, but if you are sitting in Banjul, you may get information from Soma, but if you, it's good to go and have first-hand information and see what is happening around the country. And in that tour, they met security chiefs of other sister forces, the NIA themselves, and even religious leaders, community members, CSOs, to discuss about security matters and to know the problems that are happening in other parts of the country. So I think it's very important.
And I think part of the tour was to reassure people that, look, we're here for the safety and the security of everybody, yourselves included. That's why we're coming around. That's why we want to interact with you. And I thought it was a brilliant idea that they did what they did, because it seems as if people really embraced the fact that they were reaching out to them and they were interacting with them.
It's all part of security sector reform.
Indeed,
the NIA we know now is the SIS. We've seen a different SIS. Can you imagine how many years? 4 years or coming to 5? No arrest, no detention. I think,
and no torture, which is what we heard so much of. People who've been arrested on the flimsiest of excuses came and gave testimony at the TRRC that not only were they arrested, they were detained, they were tortured in almost every case.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
So,
and he mentioned about some of the things they have been reviewing now, which is the code of conduct.
Indeed.
And it's all to do with the code of conduct, because if you don't abide by the code of conduct, sometimes they may have a good code of conduct
on paper.
But if you don't abide by the code of conduct, then it becomes useless. You know, so he said they are reviewing the code of conduct, and also about their employment or recruitment strategies. Because it's true, I've been here since, but then now the army are doing their recruitment. The police, we see them, they advertise. The NIA, I've never seen an advertisement that the NIA are recruiting. Probably
or SIS.
Sorry, the SIS again. You know, probably that's the way they operate. But I mean, if you have to recruit and you have to get the best out of the population, I mean, advertise and people will apply. But before you'll just say and say, oh, it's rumors. So I heard so and so is an SIS or NIA officer, you know, without knowing how he got into the system. But I think it should be more transparent, and then people should be able to apply, you know. So I think, you know, that will be some of the things, you know, they are reviewing at the moment.
Sure. So as you said, and the irony is that they're called SIS here. Now in Sierra Leone, if you said SIS, the reputation that the NIA had in this country is what the SIS in Sierra Leone had. Really, really fearful, and you know, you try to avoid them at all costs. So yes, we say thumbs up to the reforms that are going on, and long may they continue. And please, as Babukar says there, it's all right having on paper a code of conduct, but you have to live by it, and you have to implement and practice it. Because let's be honest, the previous lot also had a code of conduct, and I bet he didn't tell them to torture people. Indeed. Not on paper anyway.
Yes, indeed.
But yeah, that's what they did. So it's more than just the paper. It's how you implement. Yeah, okay, well, thanks for that. And now we've all been hearing about climate change and COP26. We had a year of leading up to it. It came in Glasgow and it went. Some implications for the Gambia. And it was quite a serious one. Our Vice President went and gave a very powerful speech there. Reporter Jennifer Sonko was there also. Here's a snippet.
Need to be very inclusive as young people, you know. Our governments have availed us opportunity, but also there should be that safe space for young people because they understand the grassroots problems and the issues being affected. Our farmers have abandoned their lands, you know, and also there is an increase in the rural-urban migration, and the climate change migration is on the increase as well. Our governments can sustain or keep this, you know, heavy workload on them. So, I mean, with all this being said, our livelihoods are affected, our education is affected, and of course, our economy is crumbling down due to the climate change effects.
I deliberately chose a young person there to speak because of all that he said, all those things, the economy and so on, but most importantly, their future is affected. And that's why the report that Jennifer sent, this particular one, actually started with young people demonstrating. Based on what you saw and heard and about the deal which China and India managed to get them to tweak at the end, what was your sense of whether there'd been anything concrete achieved at COP26?
Well, as long as there are young people there, demonstrations have taken place, people have sent across their messages, I think that is an achievement.
And they were given a platform to speak, let's be honest.
Exactly,
as well.
yes. But also, I mean, talking and giving the platform, if the recommendations are not implemented, then it takes us back to square one. Because this thing calls for, they said, urgent call to action. And it is the Glasgow Climate Pact, they call it.
That's right.
But then, some of these superpowers who are there, I mean, are superpowers, you know, in some way because of the use of...
They can flex.
Exactly. Because if you look at India and China, how can they get away from using coal? You know? So it's difficult because at the moment that's what is taking, you know, moving a lot of their economy forward. So they will go there and talk, but to get the 1.5, you know, Celsius, it will be a problem because they'll go there and talk, but the next day things are not being implemented. So that's the problem. But as I said, you know, getting there and then sending the message across, especially inviting youths, you know, to speak in the platforms, to speak to them, to say, look, probably your generation is going, and
you've
ours,
enjoyed your life.
Your life. Ours is about to start.
Sure.
Give us a chance, to live. But I think it's not only for this generation; it's for generations to come.
Absolutely.
But if you take an example, yes, we are all talking about COP26. Well, look at the Gambia for an example. Where are our forests? All the trees have been cut down. We can speak about COP26, but ourselves in this country.
Well, I was going to come to how it affects the Gambia specifically, because there was an article in The Guardian 2 days ago, and people can find it online, and it talked about the danger that Gambia faces, particularly Banjul, as a result of climate change. And I have to say this, I mean, I belong to several forums that Gambians belong to, and I'm on Twitter and I'm on Facebook, and I sent it out, that article, and it was quite a scary article. It wasn't that long in terms of length to read. Nobody commented. No Gambian commented. Most of the people who commented were Sierra Leoneans. I was really quite shocked. And, on Facebook, just, have close to 5,000 people following me, and about 1,500 of them are Gambians. Nobody commented on that article, and yet the article was talking just 2 days ago in the Guardian newspaper. As I said, people can find it. It was saying how scary the situation was for the Gambia with rising sea levels, and at one point when somebody just clicked like on it, I said, "Did you read it? You're in the Gambia. Read it and see what it says." Why is this indifference?
Well, I think people see it as not an imminent threat, because if you look at it, Banjul, yes, sea level rise may happen, but when? Janjambure is an island. We have islands that are inhabited by people, and these things can happen. And at the same time, if you look at it, as I said, we are destroying our environment. I live near the forest. Right. Go there now and see the trees are being cut every day for firewood, for timber. It's been destroyed. People are throwing litter into the forest. All the animals are running away. So I think in the Gambian context, we need to do a lot. Although I know, we have covered extensively about tree planting exercise. That's why QTV gave a lot of, airtime to these people. Anytime they say tree planting, we'll give them
because
coverage.
We want to get the message out.
Because we want to get the message out for people to know the importance of trees. But also, it happens only during the rainy season, probably because that's when we have free water, because we cannot plant a tree in the forest and you want to go and water it. When you want a borehole in your backyard, when you don't have enough water. So that's the issue here. So it's like planting trees, seedlings during the rainy season. During the dry season, some of them will die because they are not being properly taken care of. And also, we'll start cutting a lot more during the dry season. So it's a big problem. But again, I'll go back to what we've seen in Farafenye before, whereby instead of going to plant trees only in the bush or in the forest, they started planting trees in their communities, within the communities. And how do they do it? They bring a truckload of seedlings, orange, mangoes, pear, and other guavas, other things, and they said, "Look, community, come and take them and plant them in your trees."
Because when the same in Freetown.
Yes, when disaster happened on 7th, on the 7th, what happened? It ripped through roofs in our communities, in compounds. So they said, okay, let's fence ourselves, let's create windbreakers, so that if these disasters come, we can be prevented. So I see the Farafenye issue as a very good initiative that a lot of these communities should initiate, should emulate.
Absolutely, and I agree with you 100%, Babakar. That's part of the reasons. People might say, "Oh, you guys have a prejudice," but we don't think it's a negative thing to have for people to see these things and say, "Yeah, I want to emulate that." Look what they're doing in Farafenye. They're planting trees, and in time to come, those trees will help the environment, and who knows, save lives, because if it acts as a windbreaker and prevents roofs being blown away, then it's done a fantastic job, and of course you can eat the fruit as well.
But then back to COP26 again, $290 million. Always huge sums will be announced, has been pledged, by richer countries for the least developed countries. So we'll see what happens from there until COP27 in Egypt.
Indeed. And in fact, they're saying Egypt are already worried, because apparently they are quite a polluter already, and they're almost embarrassed that they're going to be holding the next conference. So, it's quite ironic that, but thank you for that, Babakar. And on to another, quite a different story. Remembrance Day, the 11th of the 11th, happened recently. And of course, sometimes if you live in Europe, you never get a sense ever that Africans were ever involved in the First and Second World Wars and several other wars that the European powers fought. But guess what? They really were involved. Have a look.
Despite his age and since his return from the war, Mr. Jangha owns a workshop where he spends time making a living for himself and his family.
Those who came back, they also were not given the due honor and dignity so that once they come back, they could live a dignified life. Instead, when they came back, some of them were recruited back into the field force, but others were then sent back home to the countryside, and they returned as farmers. Some of them had found, their families, in disarray, and they lived lives of hardship and poverty. They went back to the fields, and there was no support as promised.
No support as promised. Babukar, every year I post stuff about what Gambians and Sierra Leoneans did in the First and Second World War. And every time I can tell by the comments who are the people who've joined following me recently, because they'll say things like, I never knew we were involved in this. And yet, if you live in England, and you can take me up on this, and I bet you cannot live in England for 10 days without seeing a program about the war. That's an impossibility. They're obsessed with it. And yet, they never mention the contribution of African soldiers. I've never seen it. And I lived there for 40 odd years. Why this, this huge gap?
It's a difficult question. Probably.
I mean, because you also spent time in the United Kingdom, of course.
Yes, I've spent time there, but normally during Remembrance Day, I'll see the Queen or the Prime Minister coming out to lay a wreath. That's what we see, and I think for them, they are actually helping their veterans. They are actually getting some kind of help. It's in Africa that they've forgotten about us, but I mean,
because when you say they're veterans, our veterans are their veterans. It was their war.
But they call it the World War, even though they call it the World War, and that's the only context they can use, to make it universal. But we shouldn't be in that war in the first place. But we went there to back them because we didn't go there to back every country. In fact, especially Britain. But then it reminds us they formed the Commonwealth. After the abolition of the slavery, or after the Commonwealth was formed after when we got our independence. When we got our independence. But it's the same kind of thing, because people started wondering, what do we get from them in the Commonwealth? What do we get from them, after the war? But for our veterans, I think it's very important that, if you imagine, they should be, I won't call it probably compensated, but they should be looked after in the same way that they are doing with their own citizens. Absolutely. But look at our own one here, only one left. Correct. And now, this thing has been, the topic has come up again. Everybody is talking about this one man who is left, Mr. Jangha. Look at him at his 102 years, and he's still struggling to feed his family. 102 years is a goldsmith, working every day. We brought him here, to our morning show. That's correct. And we heard what he said. He's still struggling. He works, on his foot to go to work, or sometimes take a taxi because he's old and frail, But to be honest, I think it's a difficult question to say why they are not, the people we stand for, fight with,
have effectively
are not helping us.
Yes, quite.
And then again, Alpha Jallo, who is a grandson of a World War veteran, actually what he said is true. Their bodies, they died in the jungles of Burma, present Myanmar, and then that's it. They are not even given a befitting burial. I think those who come back were really lucky in some way, and unlucky in the greater aspect.
Sure. I mean, lucky to have been alive, but unlucky in the sense that, there was no particularly big thank you to them. And they just said, go back to living your lives, even though, their lives have been destroyed in many cases. And if you think to the ones who were British and went back home, many of those who had seen traumatic things were probably giving counseling and stuff like that. That never happened with our soldiers. They were just sent back home and said, go back to doing whatever you were doing before. Exactly.
So they came back with, memories, with nightmares, with scars,
Yeah,
And
physical
then
and mental scars.
Yeah, physical and mental scars. And when they came back again, he said somewhere,
Back into the
amalgamated
field force.
into the field force.
Yeah.
The rest were, they just packed
Go
and
into
went
your
back
farm.
to their families again, and then started farming.
Sure.
Imagine. So
Yeah.
in fact, farming is now more mechanized than in those days.
Sure.
So imagine how they were surviving,
Yeah.
on the farms.
So yeah, as we're saying here, and as you probably get from us, a lot more needs to be done because there are families of some of these, and I heard from Mr. Jallo, Alpha Jallo, that a lot of them are not being helped at all. So if you're watching, no apologies for mentioning that. Really, somebody needs to look into this. But thank you, Babukar. And now, if you want to do something, whatever it is, and you want to do an intervention to help somebody, to help a community, help a country, you need evidence, you need data. Are we doing enough to collect the data, the information we need? Have a look.
And Africa We Want focuses on African cultural renaissance. It also calls for an Africa with a strong cultural identity, common heritage, values, and ethics. Furthermore, the promotion of local culture, natural heritage, patrimony, and their linkages with sustainable tourism occupies an important place in the Sustainable Development Goals.
Occupies an important place in the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, when somebody thinks of statistics and data, they think it's some dry thing, but it actually connects everything. I mean, as we speak, the First Lady has just launched the vaccination, polio vaccination campaign, and they've said they want to vaccinate over 380,000 children aged 0 to 5. Now, if you don't have the data, if you don't have the statistics, you can't do that. And so that's the importance of statistics. And so, but how do we get people to realize, how important, how vital this is? Because the reason it's being mentioned on African statistics there is that they're saying that many governments, both local and central government, are not using data, they're not using statistics in the way that they should. How do we get them to do that?
Well, I think we spoke to GBOS just a few days ago.
For anybody not in the Gambia, that's Gambia Bureau of Statistics.
Yes, yes, Gambia Bureau of Statistics. And this is some of the things, concerns they were raising, that they are having a lot of challenges when it comes to data collection and then putting figures together because, for example, people don't want to talk to them, or people are too busy, or people think...
When they're doing a census, they think that you're trying to trap them somehow.
Yeah, people think it's actually free, they are not paying me anything. Why should I waste my time giving them information? Some will even go to the extent of saying, you need to pay me before I give you information. Sure. Even QTV, we've experienced this ourselves. We'll go to a certain place, to find information out of film, probably that can even help them, that can bring help to them. But when you go there, they said, you have to pay me first before I talk to you.
Well, you just hit the nail on the head, because even at our micro level, we go somewhere to do a story about a problem, and in order that we can broadcast it and these people can be helped. And yet you point the mic and the camera at the person, and they say, well, no, are you going to pay me for this? I'm like thinking, if this is highlighted, your community can end up getting help. So that's the kind of difficulty that we're dealing with, surely.
Exactly. But we've seen how many times do we go and cover a village without water, and in the next minute they get two boreholes. We've seen that.
That's it.
So unless the people change their mindset, and start talking to us, because we are not asking them about their private lives. No. This is about something that will benefit. For example, if you look at the census, the Gambia will do the next census in 2023. And then the preparations have now started. Yeah. And then they have to recruit people to go into compounds, to talk to people and start recording. They are not asking you, how much money do you have in your bank? They are telling you probably about a head count, about to know.
What is it?
Right now, if you ask a lot of people in the country, what is the population of the Gambia? They come up with different, figures. Some may say 1.8.
Because they've been estimated. The last one was 2013.
Yes.
And since then, everyone has been an estimate.
Yes.
Until recently, 2,222,138, something like that. So it's been an estimate, but if you do the data collection properly, you get much closer. I mean, in every country, it's an estimate, but in some countries, sort of 98% almost there, rather than, as we said here in the Gambia, a lot of it is guesswork.
Exactly. So if you look at the benefits of statistics or data collection, it's important because NAFA Quick Transfer, they were giving money, you know, to poor people in the country. If an assessment was not done to know how many people live in poverty, how are they going to support them?
It's a brilliant example, actually.
Exactly. How are they going to support them? 380,000 children to be vaccinated. If data was not collected, if an assessment was not made, how are you going to know that? You know, the population of the country since 2013 has gone up, but we don't know how much exactly. We can only estimate now. But to get the right figures, a proper census needs to be done. If you don't do that, if you don't talk to those people who are stakeholders, how would you know that? And it's an important information that every citizen must know. So this is why this data collection or statistics is important. So that's why we should support the Gambia Bureau of Statistics in whatever they are doing, because they will start coming around our communities and they will mark our gates. We know you may paint your gate very nice and you see somebody coming to write a white paint on it. Allow the person, is doing a job. And in fact, because we don't have addresses, for me, if someone wants to come to my home now, I use that number. I said, look for the gate, and then the number is 23. That's my home. So it may not be a proper addressing system, but then works. It has solved some of our problems. So let's allow them to come into our compounds. Let's talk to them. Let's give them information when they need it.
I think that's a brilliant turn to end on, and I think Babukar there has probably done the job for GBOS there, making the importance and the relevance of statistics in our lives. So thank you for that, Babukar. And that takes us nicely onto the break, and after the break we'll have 5 more stories. So don't go away, join us after this break.
Looking for the fastest and easiest way to receive money transfers from abroad? Well, QMoney and RIA just made it happen. Now you can receive international money transfer from RIA directly into your QMoney account with no additional cost. Once you receive an SMS alert about your transfer, walk into any QMoney agent across the country to receive your payment for free, or use the money immediately to buy credit, QPower, and other QMoney services. It's fast, safe, and convenient. For more info, call customer care on 133. QMoney, Sunu Calpe. Terms and conditions apply.
Check out the all-new Tigo 8 at S-Pass Motors. Call 3522-222 or 353-2222 for more information. Cherry.
Welcome back after that break. You're watching QTV, you're watching The Week in Review. I'm Ade Darami, and here with me is our Deputy News Editor, Mr. Babukar Sise. Babukar, thank you for your interjection so far. And I really enjoyed it. Now, viewers, you would have heard and seen us talk about statistics and the importance of statistics. Well, guess what? We've mentioned this next story more than in passing because of the importance of statistics. But there are other elements to this story. Have a look.
The national vaccination campaign comes following the discovery of the polio virus in the country in August. The type 2 polio virus was discovered in environmental sewage samples from Banjul Sewer Zone Kotu by the Ministry of Health. This prompted the declaration of a public health emergency and plans to vaccinate all children under 5. The Gambia was declared polio-free in 2004, according to the Ministry of Health. In 2020, the WHO announced that the wild polio virus had been eradicated from Africa after 4 consecutive years without reported cases. Fatoumata Barbaro, the First Lady of the Gambia, thanked partners for their immense commitment in protecting the vulnerable children.
Polio vaccination campaigns have been successful, and I believe that this one will equally do well and even better in this particular campaign. I therefore encourage all parents and caregivers that their children are vaccinated to enable us to put a stop to the circulation of the virus among the population.
We heard the First Lady Fatoumata Barbaro. Babukar, we were saying in the previous, when we were talking about the previous story, about the importance of statistics, 380,000 plus children to be vaccinated, which of course, that's another thing about the whole data. And the reason they can do it is because they have the data. but also the seriousness of this. We thought polio had been eradicated. Now it seems to be back. Did we become complacent?
Well, I don't think so, because when it is eradicated, it is eradicated. But look at Ebola. Sometimes they'll say it's Ebola free. WHO will declare, and the next 2 months discovered in Congo. So it's a kind of thing. But for polio, you know, it has been a long time, because it was in 2020 that they said we are Ebola free. The world is Ebola free.
That's right.
And then 2004, Gambia was declared free.
Oh, polio.
Polio free. Now it has emerged again.
Yes.
But it's like we have a lot of fronts to fight, because now the pandemic is around. You know, AIDS has been here for long. Malaria, you know, prevalence. Now again, polio. So, but what is important is we'll fight them as they come.
Sure,
so since we are in polio has surfaced in the Gambia, which is the polio type 2 discovered in Kotu and Banjul.
That's right.
I think what's happening is, I hope people not say we are not going to be vaccinated again, like the coronavirus, because it's a different thing. I think a lot of people know about polio, you know, because, you know, a lot of people have been sensitive
and they know
about
that vaccinations helped eradicate
exactly.
in the first time round.
It helps, because if not vaccinated, you don't want to have a child, you know, born normal and then later on become paralyzed. So you can see all the messages sent across during the launching by the First Lady is that please bring your children. Right. And we've seen a lot of mothers there, and they even came with the children at the place.
Yeah,
so
I was quite pleased to see that.
So it was important that we've seen a lot of children there. I think probably some of them think that was the very day. But it starts on the 20th to 23rd. So it's 4 days. So obviously within that 4 days, let's open our doors for them, especially the gates that are always locked. You know, because if you don't open your gate, you know, you have a problem. But also, as a warning again, there are some compounds that have dogs. Please, if you have a knocking on your gate, don't send dogs out to meet these people. Know that they've come to vaccinate your children. You know. So, but I think in general, you know, the campaign is good. And then our development partners, WHO, UNICEF, you know, WHO have pumping like a lot of money, 16 million, UNICEF 16 million, WHO also 13 million. So it's a lot of money they're pumping to do this. So it shows the seriousness of the issue. It's not a joke. So let's all embrace it, you know, fully.
I think so. I totally agree with you. Let's embrace it fully. And it's good to see that. As you said, I was quite pleased when the wide shot showed all these mothers there with their babies. Nobody had forced them to come. They came along because they know the seriousness of it. So.
Yes, and Dr. Bitte mentioned that 27 countries are experiencing this problem. So it's not only the Gambia.
That's right.
So we don't want them to, we don't want the next minute, now we are talking about coronavirus pandemic. We don't want to hear polio virus pandemic. And the only way that can stop is, you know, let's all, you know, join forces and make sure, you know, our children are vaccinated.
Good on that. And also, we don't want that list to get smaller and smaller. There are only 1 or 2 countries still on it, and we're one of those 2 countries. We want to be off the list. So definitely, please get your children vaccinated. Thank you for that, Babukar. And now, in many countries in our West African sub-region, when you go, women are heavily involved in business, and yet they don't get many opportunities. It's one of these odd things that seems to happen. People are trying to do something to remedy that. Have a look at this.
With the substantial increase in the number of startups and entrepreneurs that we've witnessed in the last decade or more, it is imperative that these businesses and associations are supported to scale up their ventures, especially when a significant portion of these businesses.
I'll end it for her there, especially as a significant portion of these businesses are run by women and young people. And I talked in the lead up to that about this kind of disparity where you have a lot of women involved in business. But they don't seem to have been given a fair shake of things. And so what we had was this challenge fund. $1 million is split 3 ways, not 3 ways equally. I think one person got 400,000, the other 2 got 300,000 each, to kind of give them a boost. And I think the publicity that came with it must inspire others, because this is meant to be an ongoing thing. It's not a one-off.
Yes, it's important, and I think it's a good way to encourage women, because it's not only giving them money where, you know, at the end of the day they will not make any profit, or, you know, the business will collapse. But also with GCCI, what they do is, you know, they will create sources of funding like this one.
That's right.
And then also they will also train.
They do support. Yes.
Support and coach you,
Yeah.
to be entrepreneurs, because you can't just get one day and be a big business person. So
Correct.
there are ways to follow, and GCCI is actually spearheading this in this country, and we've seen it.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's women entrepreneurs, this and that, women training,
That's
and it's important, and it's a lot of money, 400,000 to one, 300,000 to order two. It's important, and it's for best innovative solutions.
Well, this is it, because it was a competition.
That was the competition, and it's really good. But then again, we must also commend International Trade Center, because they are part of the support. But thumbs up to GCCI, because definitely because the thing is, women in this country, what most of the time or before, the concept is they are housewives. They stay at home. The men will go and do the job, and bring for the family. But now probably it's also down to men being lazy. We've seen a lot of women now, taking care of their families, paying their children's school fees, giving lunch to their children. Women are really strong now, so they can't just sit around and do nothing. So, and there's a lot of women now who are into entrepreneurship, and then this is why GCCI is coming out to support them, and it's important.
Yeah, I mean, it's very important, as you said. They're very resourceful. We've done many stories where we've interviewed a woman, and she says, I am the breadwinner. The business I run is what feeds my family, and we've seen so many of those stories. And so when you get something like this, as you said there, it was a competition. It was about innovation, and the ones who came up with the 3 best were the ones who got awarded. And as I was saying earlier, it will inspire others. Think, oh, there's another competition next year. I'll apply and see whether I can win.
Exactly, because as I said, women, especially rural women, even in the Combosia, we have a lot of gardens that women are involved in. So, but the issue is they will harvest, sell some in the market, some perish because of lack of proper storage facilities.
Right.
So this kind of stuff are some of the things that can help women at least to innovate. If one is not working, shift to another one, it will work. So that's the situation.
Good, and thumbs up to GCCI and partners for that challenge fund, which was launched, and then the winners were announced recently. Thank you, Babacar. Now, a completely different story, but one again that impacts women. This country, like many countries in our region and sub-region, have shamefully high rates of maternal death. When women go to deliver and end up dying. Things are changing, and they're changing slowly. The figures are getting slightly better, and so we were invited recently to one particular hospital in Farafenni, where they were doing a review and the feedback on the situation. Have a look.
The purpose of a maternal death review is to assess performance to improve the quality of safe motherhood programming, to prevent future maternal and neonatal morbidity and mortality, and to identify actions to prevent future shortcomings in access to quality maternal and neonatal health services. Basiru Drame, the Chief Executive Officer of Farafenni General Hospital, welcomed the attendees and explained the importance of the convergence.
This is something that is very, very crucial, is very, very important, because it's an avenue whereby we all take account of what has happened until this woman actually died. We intend that what's going to be discussed here, we're going to come up with recommendations or strategies that will actually avert future occurrences.
Now, one of the reasons, Babacar, why I wanted us to do that story in the first place when we were approached, Basiru Drame, we saw there, was one of the people I spoke to. I realized that in the 2 whatever years I've been here, we've done workshops where people talked about, addressing maternal mortality. But this was a hospital that was going to be giving case studies, actual case studies. They gave first names and not full names. For them to learn lessons, and they invited the public, they invited other stakeholders. I thought it was a brilliant idea. What were your thoughts on it?
It's a good idea, and I think all the hospitals in the Gambia should do this, not only Farafenni. I know Basse did it. Last time we interviewed a lady, and the mortality rate was high. So obviously they should all do this, because as he said, this is a way of assessing, the way the maternity wards operate, because if you look at it, women shouldn't die when given life. You cannot. You are given life, you know, and you should.
And you end up losing your life.
End up losing your own life. I think that's not a good thing.
Sure.
But then it happens, unfortunately, and sometimes it's due to many reasons.
Sure.
Because sometimes we blame the women themselves for coming to the hospital late. Sometimes they don't even go at all to the hospital, and it happens a lot with teenage pregnancy, because when that happens, they don't want to go to the hospital, they don't want to be seen, they are kept at home. The family is society. The family want to keep them at home because they don't want them, oh, I saw so-and-so's daughter at the hospital, so they'll keep at home until the person delivers. So sometimes when complications happen, that are some of the problems. And then one of the deaths, in fact, the hospital registered 4 deaths this year, but the last one he spoke about is 18-year-old. So we don't know what happened, but then, you know, he explained how everything happened until, you know, the woman died. But then,
and he mentioned that she had had a previous abortion.
Exactly.
Based on what they saw when they examined her.
Exactly. So there are other related things that made him or her arrive to this. But then I think all the hospitals, all the health sectors in this country should be doing this annually, so that we can know, because people are saying that the maternal deaths are high in this country, and you know, that prompted other organizations to come up and start marching and said women lives matter and this and that, you know. But to be honest, I think we should all rise up and make sure things like this should not happen.
Because what this does is it looks at the root causes. You know, why are the numbers high? Why are the figures high? And they might be different in different areas. You know, one might be because you have poor ambulance service, one might be for, you know, there might be different reasons. But unless you do something like this, you don't know what has led to the deaths. Because if you took, as you said, there were 4 cases, and all 4, they were quite different in what the reasons were. There wasn't a single thing that was, you say, oh, all 4 of them died because of this. All 4 of them died, we know, but there were different aspects to them, different ages, different situations, and so on. So yeah, very much a case where, you know, you need to know these things in order to improve.
Yes, he mentioned also blood donation, because sometimes he said anytime you see a pregnant woman at the hospital, you know that's accompanied by an old woman. Because that's true, that happens here a lot.
Right.
And then obviously if there is shortage of blood, how do we donate blood? Because obviously we have a problem, because how many times do we look at our, you know, phones on social media and we see a woman is in hospital and need blood urgently, you know, urgent people to go and help. So it happens a lot. So I think we should give blood, but also, you know, we should look at other areas as well, where, you know, in Farafenni I mentioned about, you know, lack of transportation to bring them to the hospital. You know, sometimes they are brought by donkey carts, but also we've seen ambulances now been distributed in North Bank region and other areas. So I hope this situation will now improve, whereby pregnant women will have quick access to health facilities.
Sure. I think that's brilliant. And just in closing on this blood donation thing, it's an African problem. If you go to the UK, the worst community, and you can quote me on this, for giving blood is the African community, regardless of which country they're from. Africans are the worst at donating blood in England. And I don't even know why. I have no answer for that, but it's just a fact. And so obviously in our own countries, we don't give blood either, even when it's needed. Because the blood you give when you donate might not be for your wife, because you might not be the same blood type, but somebody else could benefit from that. And yet, as I said, you know, you go with an old woman who they wouldn't take blood from that old woman because of her age. And yet the younger men whose wives are there, they're staying home, and you know, if you come, they'll ask you, would you like to give blood? They don't force you, but yet we don't do it.
Yeah, but sometimes too, again, what people need to understand is sometimes there are people who go out and donate blood, and that is kept at the blood bank.
Yes.
So when your wife or your family needs blood, they will call you and say, come and donate blood.
Yeah.
Okay, you might not be in the same blood group, but what will happen is they already have the blood group that matches the patient. So what they will do is they want to replace that one. So they will tell you, donate blood, and then they will give another one. But some people say, oh, they told me to donate. When I went there, they were already giving blood to my wife. So they will not want to donate. But it's a different thing, because yours should be replaced. They are saving your family members or your wife's life. Someone else's wife's life needs to be saved. You know, I remember Briam Hospital, when we went there, the same problem. The in charge was telling us that there was this woman who who need blood, shortage of blood, and they told the husband to donate, and the husband refused until the wife died. I think that is horrific.
Yeah, it's terrible. I remember that very, very well when we were told that, and that was quite shocking, as you said. But yeah, so please, we're encouraging people, if you're watching this and you have an opportunity to give blood, do, because, as they used to say in Europe and in America in days gone by, you give blood and the life you save may be your own. You never know. You might be in an accident and they need blood, and because you donated, your blood is there to save your own life. So yeah, thank you for that. And now on to our penultimate story. This one again made me smile, and it certainly made our colleague Mamadou Mbodj smile. Why? Have a listen.
In order to remain tolerant, a society cannot tolerate intolerance. What is called hate speech, therefore, and its allied vices, is incompatible with the principle of tolerance in a democracy. The hustings have begun for the December presidential election, and, as has been observed before, on the wrestling mat of electoral politics, rivalry discovers that courtesy overlooks. This need not be the cause for violence, for tolerance also means the capacity to endure even hurtful things without resorting to violence. 17th century French philosopher and writer Voltaire perhaps best expresses the philosophical underpinnings of tolerance. It is the consequence of humanity. We are all formed of frailty and error. Let us pardon reciprocally each other's folly. That is the first law of nature.
Of course, I chose that snippet because it was International Day for Tolerance, but that snippet directly relates to our own situation here in the Gambia, as our colleague Mamadou Mbodj says there. Babakar, we're in the middle of an election campaign, and people can hurl hurtful words at each other, and yet we're being asked still be tolerant. Is it possible?
Yes, anytime you speak about Gambia, they say Gambians are very peaceful. Everybody, the smiling course. We say nice things about ourselves. Some said, don't worry, it's just leading to the election, but then, nothing will happen. Yes. But you don't take things for granted, because you don't know who is going to ignite a bigger fire. And then politicians have a bigger following, people are behind them, they listen to them, and they can ignite something. Look at Donald Trump, the Capitol riot.
When they stormed the
Exactly,
Capitol.
what happened, because one man made a statement, and the next minute a whole lot of people went and started destroying things and causing problems. So I think our politicians need to learn a lot from what had happened in America.
I'm glad you used, because that's the very example I was going to use. So I'm glad you stepped in there even before I did.
Exactly. So obviously, we are tolerant, yes, it's true. Gambia, we are tolerant. But then leading to elections, that's why there are a lot of sensitizations going on. Every time we cover a lot of stories about, CSOs, stakeholders, this and that, about peaceful before, during, and after elections. So we've covered a lot of issues, in that aspect. And I think the message is being sent across. We have a lot of institutions who are sending out that message. Anywhere you go, advertisement on radios, on TVs, people are still advocating for peace. I hope that will prevail. So, but the things should go to our politicians. Let them be wary of
temperate language.
Yes, we see the IEC, the National Human Rights Commission, came out this week and gave a warning to all the parties. That the languages that two of the parties are using are not good enough. They should tone down and wash down their language. So I think that's important for all of us to maintain, because if a crisis happens, something happens, it's everybody. Everybody's going to feel the problem. If you have a gun, I have a knife in my house. Each of them can kill. It depends on who strike first. So let's just be careful about what we do. At the end of the day, as we always say, elections will come and go, the country remains. And that's the truth.
This is a fact. This is a fact. The country remains. And when we were discussing this, because I told somebody in the office that we were going to be discussing this on the program, and we got into a discussion about politicians and how they can incite people. And I said to her, when was the last time you saw two politicians exchanging blows with each other? And she said, I've never seen it. I said, there you go. And yet some of them can incite, as Donald Trump did. And that was the example I gave her. I said, look what Donald Trump incited in America. He wasn't involved. He didn't go and punch Joe Biden. He just turned other people loose. And that's what can happen, and that's what needs to be avoided. We need to be tolerant.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed, we need to be, especially in our context right now where the elections are looming. We need to be. That's why I'll commend the Inter-Party Committee for the good job they are doing. You know, they'll put all the politicians, political parties together, and then we've seen recently, and there was a signing of an MOU by all of them to make sure, you know, they all abide by the, you know, elections code of conduct. So I think that's very important. But they are the leaders, they are on top, and we are looking up to them, and then they should, you know,
they should lead.
They should lead the way, yeah.
Exactly. So leaders show leadership. Thank you for that. And yes, please, in closing this segment, this election, please let us be tolerant towards each other. We do not want violence. This is a small country, and if you touch one person, you touch us all. So please make it violence-free. Now, a story that has been rumbling for a number of years now is coming towards a conclusion. It hasn't quite reached a conclusion. And when you hear this snippet, you'll find out why. Have a look.
Egypt were undefeated throughout the whole campaign. It was a no contest in deciding the tightest group. That award belongs to Group G, where Ghana won 1-0 thanks to a controversial penalty against South Africa to finish level on points with the South Africans. The Ghanaians going through having scored 1 goal more than South Africa. Nonetheless, South Africa have since challenged the result and alleged it was fixed, and FIFA are looking into their claims.
Not much time to spend on this. I'm not sure we need to anyway. But Babakar, before we came in the studio, we were talking about the fact that continent of 55 nations and we only get 5 representatives. So we've now down to the final 10 who then have to play off against each other to find the 5 that will go. Is it time Africa got greater representation?
Yes, indeed. We need greater representation, but all depends on our performance as well. You don't perform well, you get less representation. You know, that's the problem. So Africa needs to, you know, improve a lot in football, you know, and it's all down to that. But then again, I support Gambia, I support Africa, you know, especially the World Cup. But at the end, it is always disappointing. That's the problem.
We're always let down. But you know, we've heard there. I mean, big countries, Ivory Coast got knocked out, South Africa got knocked out. Although they're challenging it now. In fact, I was arguing with somebody on Twitter this very day today about it and said, look, maybe there were actually worse refereeing decisions, but because they happened, you know, 2 years ago, nobody's talking about them. But this one happened in the crucial game, because had South Africa drawn or won that game, they would have gone through instead of Ghana. And so it matters. But to go back to the whole thing, you have England in a group with Andorra and San Marino, England winning 10-0. You know, they're never going to be in danger of not qualifying, really. And so there's that unfairness, and that's what we're trying to address and redress potentially. So, okay, so in closing, how many teams would you like to see from Africa?
Well, at the moment it's 5, but then at least we should have 10. But then, as I said, all depends on the way we will perform. Because if we go and we never reach the semi-finals, you know, or the finals, you know, I think we'll remain 5 for a long time.
5 for a long time. My own prediction is we should have 8, 2 from East, West, North, and South. Nice round figure for the moment. And then when we win the World Cup, you can give us 12. Babakar, thank you. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for coming on the program.
Yeah, welcome for having me.
And as ever, I say to the viewers, thank you for watching. Until next week, it's goodbye.